Welcome to your Daily Dose of Sunday School, episode 117. Last 2 days I numbered it wrong, but this really is 117. And we're dealing with the law of Levirate Marriage. Last week we looked at Kinsman Redeemer on Ask Anything Wednesday. We're looking at Levirate Marriage. Those two ideas get all bound together because of the book of Ruth. What is Levirate Marriage? Levirate marriage, Deuteronomy 25:5, if brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in to her and take her as his wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his dead brother, and his name may not be blotted out of Israel. So immediately we see that God is providing an offspring through someone else. And so a very New Testament type idea that we can be grafted into someone else's family. We're told because of the redemptive work of Christ that we are Abraham's offspring. And somebody might say, well, that's impossible. You can't just be part of that family. You don't have Jewish blood. Plenty of stuff in the New Testament to say, well, that's all Huey? Anyway, it's all junk. Because what did John the Baptist say? He said, God is able to raise up offspring for Abraham out of these stones. I believe that was John the Baptist, unless it was Jesus. Anyway, so very New Testament idea that you can have someone grafted into this line and be considered an offspring of someone who they're not biologically the offspring of. And then, so in the book of Ruth, the Levirate marriage and Kinsman Redeemer are all mixed together. You've got Naomi and her husband Elimelech and their two sons. They go to Moab from Israel because of a famine, and then all the men die, and you're left with Naomi and her two daughter-in-laws, the Moabite women that her sons married. One daughter-in-law leaves, but Ruth, seemingly because she has some sort of developing some faith in the God of Israel, she has this loyalty to her mother-in-law, and she stays with her, goes to Israel, and so later on, Boaz, he's a kinsman redeemer. That's the role he plays in the land, the inheritance of Elimelech, whose land he's going to take care of until Elimelech's offspring can receive it. Elimelech's offspring comes about because Boaz marries Ruth, Elimelech's daughter-in-law. So this is, they have a son, Obed, and Obed becomes then the line of Elimelech. So he'll get this land that Boaz has been the kinsman redeemer for. And this is Ruth 4:17. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. So you see how this son of a Gentile woman is grafted in to this Israelite family, receives an inheritance with them. Hopefully you hear some kind of gospel echoes there. Very much reminds me of Romans 11. Romans 11 describes this very strange situation where the promises of the gospel before Christ were made to the Israelites, but most of the people in the church are Gentiles, and most of the Jews did not believe. And well, how can that be possible? And Paul says, okay, so it's actually, this has happened for a time in order for ultimately Israel to be blessed by the gospel as well. But what it describes the church, the grafting in the Gentiles into the nation of Israel. essentially, it's in this comparison of this olive tree being cut off. It's like, it's kind of like Israel is the dead man who has no offspring. So what does Jesus do? He comes in, he takes a bride that is both Jewish and Gentile, but mostly Gentile at this point. So you could say he takes a Gentile bride, kind of like Ruth, and then the offspring are grafted into this family coming from Abraham. So you see how it's kind of like Obed being called the child of Naomi. But this isn't ultimate, so the goal is for the blessing of Israel, not so that they can be totally cut off. The Gentiles are brought in so that both Gentiles and Jews are blessed. And so it goes on in Romans 11:25, lest you be wise in your own conceits, I want you to understand this mystery, brothers. A partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. In this way, all Israel will be saved. So just like Naomi becomes blessed, she receives salvation in the work of the loving actions of Boaz, and taking this Gentile bride and bringing a Gentile into her family. I'm sure he was circumcised, so he wasn't exactly a Gentile at that point. But you can see how this is definitely this picture of what God does in Levirate marriage is very much like what happens in kind of the larger scale of Israel's cut off for unbelief, Gentiles brought in, and then Israel finally blessed at the end. The final people group to be blessed in the Great Commission is the nation of Israel. But right now they're blessed with offspring from the Gentiles.